Well, welcome into another edition of the Cory Sanning Show, everybody, coming across the digital airwaves of YouTube. I am Cory Sanning, your host, as usual, the one and only. Well, not really only, but the one. And got a pretty good show on tune for you all today because we're going to be getting into some controversial topics again. It is Kobe Bryant's birthday, so it's Kobe Day on this show. As you can see, I've got my old school Lakers number 8 on. We're going to get into some, go down some fun, well, fun now. Fun memories to take a trip down memory lane of my favorite Kobe moments. Going to react to some NFL preseason action. Well, the final NFL preseason action, thank the Lord. And, excuse me, going to react to a little bit of what First Take had to say, sounding the alarm on some of the Ravens' division rivals. One in particular that probably doesn't surprise many of you that have been following the NFL this offseason. But, excuse me. Lord have mercy, forgive me. I drank a Monster, and I'm still in the middle of drinking one right before this. But for those of you just now tuning in, please like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell button because it's more important now than ever to get notified of when we drop our live content here on the Cory Sanning Show. I am the sole proprietor of Sanning Media, LLC, so I do appreciate it if you stay tuned in, locked in, and ready to go for the NFL season because we're going to have a lot to say. And it's not just going to be me, too. We're going to bring in roundtables of guests. We're going to let you all come in and chime in with your opinions, as well as other ways you can support the channel. And speaking of ways you can support the channel, this episode is brought to you by Clean Eats Knoxville. If you have watched the show before, if you've tuned in with me on Instagram at Cory Sanning, you know that I just don't have time. And I'm quite frankly, I might be too lazy to meal prep. And Clean Eats Knoxville makes it so easy for me. And in fact, on this episode right here, live on the air, we're going to go make our order for the week because orders close at midnight. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it, show you how easy it is to have your meal prep taken care of by your good friends at your local Clean Eats. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here as I go ahead and get ready to make my order for the week. Obviously, you go to the home screen right here. There's Jordan Palmer, which, you know, for those of you who don't really not really familiar with that family, it's brother Carson Palmer for all of us NFL heads in here. Well, I'm going to allow this time to choose my location. So obviously, well, funny enough, because you click the state you're in, Tennessee. Obviously, Knoxville, Bearden is my location. And then it brings up the entire menu. And then as you can see, you can download the meal plan macros matrix, if I can even speak here, to get the exact calories, carbs, proteins, fats, for each meal that you're eating. Obviously, it has it right here, but if you want those of you who want to get into the nitty gritty, this is this week's menu. There's a new menu every week. They do cycle over a period of time. You know, you'll sometimes get the same things over the course of like 12 to 14 weeks, but I'm in for this variety because it keeps me from eating chicken, broccoli, and rice every single day like I did in my early days in legacy media when I made no money. So, of course, got to have a couple of chicken dinners in there, a couple Southern chicken dinners, makes it a little easier. You always want to have one that's low calorie and high protein, and that's Monterey chicken's a very good example of that, low in carbs because it has broccoli, of course. We're going to get a couple of those. Obviously, got to have me some sort of Mexican in my life, so I'm going to get a couple of steak fajitas. So that brings us up to 6. Big steak omelet. As we know, I'm a breakfast guy. That's 8. I love me some chicken Alfredo. It's a little higher in calories, but it's a little higher in protein, so I'll take it. I'm going to have 2 of those. Ponzu chicken meatballs, and then we get down here in the brisket con queso pasta, which obviously a little bit higher in calories, but some days you're not in the mood for eating too much. So we're going to grab a couple of those too. So that brings us to 2, 4, 6, if I can even count, 8, 10, 12. And I get 14, so might as well make a little variety. So you can choose, obviously, from a wide variety of shakes, cleanwiches, which are ice cream sandwiches, protein style, epic chicken pizza. They have a new pizza every week, protein PB&Js, which are protein Uncrustables, and pinatas. Obviously, they have different salads each week along with the premium meals, and you can get shakes and dessert bars as well, so you can avoid the overpaying of a Quest bars at your local Walmart. So you click continue. You can obviously choose low carb if you want. I'm obviously going to log in because I have an account. And I'm going to go ahead and get this thing going. Now, some of you see my personal email address. I really don't care. Just don't be sending me too many prank emails. I'm going to log in, see if I remember my password. Never. And I'm a pay in store. And boom. That easy. That's how you place your order at Clean Eats. Been wanting to show people for a while just because a lot of people ask me how to do it, and it's so simple. I just pay in the store, and my meal prep's taken care of for the week, and honestly, it's cheaper than what I'd spend on going out to Chipotle every night, certainly. But those of you that are just now tuning in, if you didn't tune in yesterday, we went into deep detail in regards to the decision to deny Eric Menendez parole. Obviously, his brother Lyle was up for parole yesterday. The hearing lasted more than roughly 11 hours. And just like his brother, Lyle Menendez was denied parole. They will be eligible unless the governor grants them clemency or new trials or a lesser sentence is imposed due to this quote unquote new evidence that's come out in regards to claims of sexual abuse that was made in their first trial back in the early 90s. They're not going to be eligible to go up to the before the parole board for another 3 years. And in my opinion, justice was served in both parole hearings. As I've been very outspoken about this, I don't believe these guys should be free. I do believe they're so dangerous to society, and this was the mastermind behind it all. Those of you who remember the trial, remember the evidence in the case, Lyle was the one that was orchestrated it all. Lyle was the one that drug Eric along for the ride. Lyle was the one that was threatening everybody afterwards once Eric confessed because he couldn't handle the shame of it anymore. And Lyle was ultimately the one that was caught on tape before the second trial, basically affirming everything that the public thought they knew after the first trial, which is that they concocted this whole abuse excuse, as Lyle called it himself, the abuse excuse scheme to just try to get off with a lesser sentence because they knew they were caught red-handed. I mean, it's like a kid getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar and crumbs on his mouth, and he's sitting there saying, I didn't eat the cookie. That was pretty much what that was like. And, I mean, we're going to go ahead and get into why the parole board ultimately chose not to grant Lyle parole. If I can share my screen right here real quick. It was a combination of what you heard from in Eric's hearing. A panel of parole hearing officers evaluated the brothers individually. Similarly to his brother, Lyle Menendez faced the board via video conference from the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego. The panel has found today that there are still signs that Lyle poses a risk to the public, Parole Commissioner Julie Garland said. We find your remorse is genuine. It very well may be. In many ways, you look like you've been a model inmate. You have been a model inmate in many ways who has demonstrated the potential for change. Again, Lyle's a proven sociopath, so it's debatable. But despite all these outward positives, we see you still struggle with antisocial personality traits like deception, minimization, and rule breaking that lie beneath that positive surface. Don't ever not have hope. This denial is not the end. It's a way for you to spend more time to demonstrate, to practice what you preach about who you are and who you want to be. End quote. I can't sit here and say I disagree with that assessment because from the very beginning, it's been known that Lyle was the mastermind behind those crimes, which are now 36 years well into history. Those of you who don't know or didn't watch the episode yesterday, you know, Lyle and Eric Menendez were the two brothers back in 1989 who shot their parents at point blank range dozens of times with shotguns in their family home in Beverly Hills, in all likelihood because they wanted to inherit a $14 million inheritance that they were at risk of losing because they weren't living up to their dad's extreme expectations that he thrust upon them from being an immigrant that came and worked his way up to the top of the Hollywood entertainment business. Very well likely could have been abusive behind closed doors. Definitely was emotionally abusive. Very well could have. I mean, who knows? I never said that their claims of sexual abuse weren't true. I just said there's not a ton of evidence to corroborate what they said. And the fact that they were barred from using that testimony because it was admitted as hearsay or dismissed as hearsay in the second trial, I think says something. And of course, everyone's like, oh, that was just because the DA, Gil Garcetti, knew they needed a conviction for the brothers because they look even worse after what happened with OJ. No, the DA can't control. The DA doesn't. If the DA had the say on how trials go down, there would never be trials because they would just get automatic convictions. the district attorney, I mean, yeah, he did. He only gave the jury a chance in the second trial to come back with either guilty of first-degree murder or acquit, because they were that sold that they had that slam dunk of a case. But I mean, the fact that people actually believe that district attorney's offices can control what happens in trials, then there would be acquittals would never happen. OJ would have died in prison. Casey Anthony would have gone to prison. It's just the way the legal system works. It's not always fair. It doesn't always seem right, but that's the way it works. And Eric and Lyle Menendez did not testify in their second trials. Eric and Lyle Menendez did not bring up abuse in their second trials. And Eric and Lyle Menendez have not been able to produce any proof that this abuse happened beyond hearsay. This letter that was supposedly found is probably the most significant piece of evidence, and it's just a letter. And it didn't win them a new trial yet. And it probably is looking like it probably won't, because this new district attorney in LA County is pretty old school and pretty harsh when it comes to crime. Because before this, the previous district attorney and his, send off, once this became a Netflix series, recommended lesser sentences. But the justice system made its decision back in the mid 90s, and you have to respect that. And I'm just, like I said, those of you that remember the trial, remember Eric and Lyle Menendez. I mean, they went on a lavish spending spree after their parents' murder. You can literally go buy a New York Knicks card from the 90s of Mark Jackson, and they are in the background of the picture on that card, because they were sitting courtside at a Knicks game across the country for reasons I don't know. I mean, I'm personally, if my parents just got blown away like that, or if my parents died in general, even if it was from natural causes, I'm not flying across the country to go to a Knicks game within that short amount of time from such a tragic and traumatic event. And like I said, the manufactured alibi and the fact that it was premeditated and they bought these shotguns weeks in advance, and just none of it adds up. And then you get caught red-handed, and you have to find some way. No criminals know to just come out there and say, I just did it because I wanted the money, or I did it because I'm a shitty person. No one says that. OJ never confessed word for word what happened until the day he died. What makes anyone think that the Menendez brothers are going to be any different? I mean, like I said, I think there's validity to the points that they bring up, that their dad wasn't a good person and their mom may have turned her eye the other way. But the fact that I guess people now think that just gives you that just grants you a free murder or two. No, it doesn't. Life doesn't work like that. That's not how the justice system works. That's not how morality works. Two wrongs don't make a right. We should not live our lives based off of karma. Justice is the way you live your life. And I'll be the first to admit to you, I'm a O.J. Simpson's biggest outspoken critic for someone who wasn't around when the trial happened, that he was railroaded in the Vegas trial. I mean, nobody gets 33 years for a robbery, let alone serve 9 years for that. I don't know. But it's a justice system, and it's the way it works, and you have to respect it. And I think the justice system made the right decision. Or disagree with me all you want. You're entitled to your opinion, but the Menendez brothers deserve to be behind bars, and hopefully the longer they stay behind bars, the better off society will be. But we're going to take a break from commenting on legal cases for the time being. Just get back to our regularly scheduled program here on the Cory Sanning Show. As we all know, the preseason is wrapping up. NFL season opener is about roughly a little less than 2 weeks away, when the Eagles open up, I believe, on Thursday night against the Cowboys, if I'm not mistaken. I need to study up on the schedule better, because we're going to be doing our season predictions next weekend on this show. But ESPN First Take, as we all know, I'm a devout Ravens fan, but the Ravens are in the same division as Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. They made it clear from the start of the preseason they were playing their starters more so than everybody else, so they can avoid getting off to these slow starts that have plagued them the past few years. I mean, head-scratchingly slow starts. I believe they were 0-3 to start this year. The previous year, they were 0-2. They're 1-11, I believe, in September in the past 2 to 3 years under that regime, under Zach Taylor. Not a surprise, not that great of a coach. But ESPN First Take had a discussion after the Bengals preseason loss to the Commanders about just how mind-bogglingly bad this defense is, and it was bad last year. And we're going to go ahead and get right into it right now. Mina Kimes was the most outspoken. As we know, Mina Kimes does know what she's talking about when it comes to the AFC North. So we're going to get into her reaction first, and then we'll respond on the other side.
Preseason, but head coach Zach Taylor isn't worried about how Cincy's looked thus far. Take a listen, ladies and gentlemen.
We want to go out there and shut down every offense we play in the preseason and score a bunch of points on. But an overreaction to 5 to 10 plays, you're not going to get that from me. I can promise you that.
Okay, so while Taylor may not be concerned about the preseason, last year indicates there are legit concerns about Cincy's defense. There were 5 games last season. Cincinnati's defense allowed at least 35 points per game, second most in the NFL behind only the Panthers. Mina, after watching Burrow in the Bengals, what's your level of concern for them?
Red alert, 9 out of 10 at least. I'm overreacting because of what you just said, which was this defense was awful last year. It'd be one thing if they looked bad in the preseason, but they were coming off of even an average season. Then we could say, well, they're figuring some stuff out, new coaching staff, new players in the lineup. They were bad, and they still look bad. And I struggle to see a pathway for them to get significantly better. Talk about Trey Hendrickson and the need to pay him and get him on the field. That's fine. Chris, you know this. Trey Hendrickson can't do anything if teams are putting up 6+ yards a clip on them and gashing them on the ground the way that the Washington Commanders did. I mean, the run defense in that game was jarring. Just major issues fitting the run at the first and second level of that defense. Trey Hendrickson isn't fixing that. Maybe young players will develop by the end of the season. I think that's why they went out and got Al Golden from the coaching ranks. But I do not see this defense making significant improvement this year at all.
And she's kind of beating a dead horse because this is what everyone's been saying since last year. Mina Kimes is very outspoken about the AFC North. As you know, I love Mina Kimes because she's very much Lamar Jackson and Ravens supporter. And she makes a fair point. And they've looked bad this preseason. I mean, Cincy fans going on Twitter /X all they want and brag about how good their receiver, Burrow to Chase looks. Of course, that's a given. Their offense is always going to look good with a quarterback and receiver combo like that. But when Philly's second and third string guys are marching down your throat and scoring at will, that's on your starters. Nonetheless, that's alarming. Last season alone, Cincy was 3-4 in games where they scored 33 or more points. That's unheard of. 33 or more points. They scored that 7 times and only won 3 of those games. 2 of those losses came to the Ravens, in which they had double-digit leads in the second half. In both games. But it ultimately comes down to defense. And, I mean, Chris Canty, as for as big of outspoken of a Bengals critic as I am, Chris Canty might be the guy on the national airways that takes the cake. And he just laid on, had to piggyback on the same point that Mina Kimes made. And we'll take a look at what he has to say, and we'll respond to the other side of that.
Nothing has changed. They are the most one-dimensional team in all of football. And the strength of their team, the identity of their team, which is Joe Burrow in that offense, is incredibly unbalanced. So the one dimension that they do have is also one-dimensional. I don't know that there's a quarterback, a player in the NFL that has more pressure on them in terms of what they have to do week to week in order for their team to win than Joe Burrow. His team crosses midfield, he's got to get points. When they get in the red zone, he's got to get touchdowns, not settling for field goals. It's incredibly hard in terms of the hand that he's been dealt. But in no way, shape, or form do I feel like the Cincinnati Bengals are doing him a disservice because Joe Burrow was out here caping for his guys to get paid this offseason. So what I will say is this, year over year, the biggest change, the biggest improvement that I expect from the Cincinnati Bengals is for them to be better earlier in the season because of what they've done in the preseason and putting their quarterback out there and Joe Burrow prioritizing making sure they get out to a fast start.
And Chris Canty's got a point as well. there is no quarterback coming into this year that has more pressure on him to be perfect every game than Joe Burrow. I mean, now I guess he understands how Lamar felt earlier on in his career when he didn't have any weapons to help him. Even though Joe Burrow has the weapons, he just doesn't have a defense. And they don't have a great offensive line, which they've never, for some reason, since they've had Joe Burrow, it seems like they can't protect the guy. And so lo and behold, his legs are still holding up. But they are the most one-dimensional team in football. And their offense is one-dimensional because they don't really have a great run game. It's all drop back and throw. And that works a lot when you got a quarterback and receivers like that. But it doesn't win you a lot of games. He put up a lot of numbers. I had Bengals fans just yesterday tell me, oh my gosh, look at all these yards he threw for. Yeah, I mean, when you throw a significantly more than the next guy in line because you're playing from behind and that's the only way your team can move the ball down the field, of course your numbers are going to be inflated. Of course you're going to put up 43 touchdowns. Of course you're going to throw for 4,800 yards. But how many of those, how much did that contribute to you getting to the playoffs? No, it did not. You got hot at the end of the season, but it was too little too late because you started so slow. And at this point, their defense now is worse than it was last year because they don't have Trey Hendrickson, and I think he'll end up staying. But even with his 17.5 sacks last year, it didn't matter. They still couldn't stop a cold. And he's not a great run stopper regardless. So even their best defensive player is one-dimensional. This team just has one-dimensional written across its forehead. And that's a giant-ass forehead right now. And as Chris Canty, as you saw Kimberly Martin getting into a little at the end, you went into the fact that Joe Burrow went on this big media tour, during Super Bowl week, among others, caping for Cincinnati to pay his receivers, which they did. I'm always talking about the T. Higgins contract as it's not what it appears, but we'll see if they keep him after this season. But when you handicap your team, when it's a mom and pop shop like the Brown family is, and they don't have the money to just go out and pay everybody, they don't even have the money to pay for hotel rooms for people who are coming back to their very thin Ring of Honor ceremonies. Little shot there. What are you going to expect when such a high percentage of your salary cap is dedicated to 3 guys? And 3 guys can only make such a difference when they're all playing on one side of the ball. Are the Bengals wasting Joe Burrow's prime years in this offense? Yeah, I think they are. Honestly, that team they had when they went to the Super Bowl, perhaps the year after, opportunistic, well-rounded not a well-rounded defense, but they were opportunistic and could stop people on occasion. And, you had Tyler Boyd with that receiving core. You had Joe Mixon. Those years are gone. Now you're hoping to draft well to replace all the defensive stars you've lost, or, at least defensive mainstays. And now you're going into this year basically saying, hey, you all score 40 every game, or we ain't got a snowball's chance in hell. And it's hard to score 40 every game in the NFL, especially going up against the defenses and the tough, hard-nosed football that is the AFC North, regardless of how good each team is. But they always play tough, and they always hit you in the mouth. But to cap it all off, Mina Kimes, once again, reiterates what Chris Canty said. You can't have it both ways, though. We can't sit here and say, oh, we can't feel bad for Joe Burrow, but he had a hand. And he's not the GM of the team, but he had a hand in this. And we're going to listen to this as well and see, respond on the other side.
Look, we're not saying that, no, actually, Joe Burrow is the GM of the Bengals and he is completely responsible for the construction of this roster and how it's built. However, I feel like too often I see people on this program and others talking out of both sides of their mouths, saying Joe Burrow has the best 1-2 punch at receiver in the entire NFL. What a group of weapons. But oh my God, that defense, he is so put upon. You can't really have it both ways there. This was a decision that they made as a franchise. And yes, it is incumbent upon the team to do a better job of drafting and developing, no doubt. But the offense is stacked. That is not an excuse. Unfortunately, and I think I share Chris's concern here too, I do worry about the pressure to put up points leading to passing more on 3rd and longs, taking more sacks, more pressure behind that offensive line. And that could be difficult for them to play a more balanced brand of offensive football because of it.
And as I just showed you, 3 and 4 last season in games where they scored 33 points or more. Yeah, I did my research before the show. Of course, I can always come prepared. Please believe. But it's you nail it right on the head. There's no excuses. And everyone's going to be, oh, we have a horrible offensive line. We have a horrible defense. You made your own bed. Poverty franchise, poverty decision making. It's always been that way. And it's not going to change until the Brown family sells this team. And the Bengals are going to waste Joe Burrow's prime years, just like they wasted Carson Palmer's prime years. Now he did get hurt, so I'll give you a legit reason there why he, the 2005-6 Bengals didn't live up to their potential, but he has made it well known since the reason he was out after 2011, 2012, whichever year it was because of how cheap that franchise is. I mean, when it comes to defining a ownership group as a mom and pop shop, it doesn't get any more mom and pop shop than the fine Brown family out of Cincinnati. And like I said, unless they strike gold in the draft in the next few years for the defensive side of the ball, this is going to be the same old song and dance. And part of me feels a little bit bad for Cincinnati fans in that respect, because they're just going to be watching their team put up 30 points a game and lose. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year unless Shamar Stewart turns into a game wrecker, which I don't. I mean, he has the potential to, but he didn't show it all that consistently in college. Jermaine Pratt's gone. Who do they have in the secondary that can really consistently cover? And you got a division with, albeit old Aaron Rodgers, but, tough-nosed organization in the Steelers, Mike Tomlin as head coach, and then but the Ravens are head and shoulders above everyone in the AFC North, and they're one of the best teams in the NFL. So we could see they could not possibly not get off to an 0-2 start this year, but I don't expect to see Cincinnati as a major factor. Even if they do somehow squeak into the playoffs, you have to be able to stop somebody in the NFL to go deep in the postseason, and they just can't do that. So that's all I have to really say about that. You're going to hear me get on Cincinnati fans much, much more throughout this season because I love it. Bills fans too. Watch your all's mouths. But we're going to get into our I told you it was Mamba Day. Happy 47th birthday, heavenly birthday to the one, the only Kobe Bryant. For those of you that don't know, my first tattoo, which is unfortunately covered up by the lower third right here, was just less than a month after Kobe passed away in the tragic helicopter crash that claimed he and 8 other people's lives in January 2020. It's really honestly the moment that the world went into pretty much a shit show for the next 3 to 4 years. And it's hard to believe that it's been that long. It seems like it was yesterday. I still remember exactly what I was doing, where I was sitting. I remember exactly how I felt when I saw the news. I remember I was sitting on the couch and pull up a little, iconic graphic of Kobe. But I was sitting on the couch and I saw just a few tweets. It was actually from my partner on the Tennessee beat at the time, the men's basketball beat, DeMichael Cole, who now works for the Memphis Commercial Appeal covering the Grizzlies. He just said, "Man, not Kobe." And I was just like, what are you talking about? Bro, what are you talking about? And next thing I know, I see the TMZ tweet pop up, Kobe Bryant dead, dies in helicopter crash. I was like, what? And I clicked on the article and I read it. And my heart dropped into my stomach. I was momentarily, and I went to tell my dad, I was momentarily relieved because because I refreshed it and it went to the TMZ error 404 page, page could not be found. So I was like, okay, good. TMZ got a bad source or bad lead. It's possible TMZ, given the way that they cover things and the type of media that they are, you can argue they're the New Day tabloid, even though a lot of the information they get is factually correct and first-hand sourced. But all of a sudden, then the Woj bomb dropped, and I was about to go to the gym. I was highly motivated in my fitness journey at the time. It was at the beginning, I was starting to lose weight, get more confidence in myself. I had no desire to do anything that entire rest of the day. That took the wind out of my sails. I think I felt like a family member died for at least a good 2 to 3 weeks. And I remember the first time the NBA, or the first day after when the NBA broadcasted great games, Mike Breen couldn't even talk straight. Everybody was upset. Nobody, the tributes, Doc Rivers, emotional outside of the locker room, Greg Popovich, everybody just stood still to honor a basketball icon that was gone way too soon, and one that we honestly felt like Superman was invincible. Like, it just felt impossible. Because he felt like somebody that was going to live forever. He was untouchable. He was the Black Mamba. Mamba mentality. Outwork everybody. It didn't seem like there was nothing Kobe couldn't do, because he was starting to become as good in his post-playing career as he was as a player, which is top 10 all time. He won an Oscar just within a handful of years after he retired. An Oscar. That's unheard of. This is the guy that goes to sat courtside at Laker games and learns the language of opposing players so he can talk trash in Slovenian. He learned French. Tony Parker tells the story all the time back in the 2000s to trash talk Tony Parker. This is a guy that could almost learn everything. Now, are we perfect people during our times on this earth? I would challenge you to find one. Nobody is a perfect person, but Kobe was a beam of light that inspired an entire generation, and that's why you still have people. I'm guilty of it myself when I'm ever at the office and I chuck something into the trash can. It's always Kobe. You always hold the pose for a second, even if you don't say it out loud, it's Kobe. And we're going to get into some of my favorite my top 5 Kobe moments. Obviously, some of you aren't even going to remember because you weren't even around for. And some of these, are just my personal opinion. Sorry about that. But I put together a quick list of 5, and we're going to go ahead and get into the first one. The first one, Amnesty That versus the Mavericks in 2013. Those of you that don't remember, the 2012-13 Lakers were good. They weren't great. They were touted as being a championship contender with Dwight and Steve Nash, but it didn't work out. But Mark Cuban, who's the former majority owner of the Mavericks, was very outspoken. I don't even know, honestly, looking back, if he was even really serious when it came to this. Because he basically just said, the Lakers they might as well amnesty Kobe. And that was a huge mistake. Kobe in that game, the Mavericks were in a race for the playoffs, for a playoff spot, and Kobe practically said none of that. 38 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, and he made 4 or 5 threes. And we all remember the infamous tweet after that said, amnesty that. Kobe took everything personally. He was the closest thing we had to Michael Jordan since Michael Jordan. And it was great at that point to see, because you kind of got the sense at that point that the Lakers were past Kobe was past his championship days. So you really wanted to see those classic performances, because his team was good, but at the most they were making it to the second round. Usually weren't, they didn't advance ever beyond that after 2011. But that one I just really remember, just because it just gave you a glimpse of vintage Kobe. And at that point, that's all we ever wanted. Even though he wasn't, clearly he wasn't he hadn't torn his Achilles yet, and he wasn't at the very end of his career, but he was on the downside. So that was one. Obviously, my number 4 is Mamba Out. 61 points in his finale. I mean, you couldn't script a better ending to a career than that, other than if he would have done this in the NBA Finals in a closeout game, which the Lakers weren't good enough, and he wasn't going to leave LA because he was a lifer. 60 points. I really honestly don't care that he shot 22 of 50 and less than 50%. He deserved to put up that many shots. We wanted him to put up that many shots. He took over down the stretch of that game and single-handedly brought the Lakers back and did what Kobe did for so long. Clutch shot after clutch shot, tough shot after tough shot. And, Shaq even showed up, challenged him to get 60, and then the motherfucker went out and got 50. And then, as I quote, the motherfucker went out and got 60. And then, obviously, the iconic speech after, Mamba Out. I think that was the last time. Actually, that was the last time he legitly actually hooped until the day he died. I remember he appeared on First Take a couple years after and said, "Yeah, I mean, aside from shooting around, the last time I legitly hooped was when I scored 61." And I mean, I really can't blame him when he was busy winning Oscars and, you know, moving on to the second portion of his career, being an advocate for women's basketball, coaching his daughters. Gigi, obviously, has unfortunately passed away in the helicopter crash with him. That was one of my favorites, and that's, I know, obviously, it's ingrained in everyone else's memory as well. Number 3, some people will be a bit surprised just given the fact that it wasn't his greatest individual performance, but it was, for me, it's a Game 7 win against the Celtics in the 2010 NBA Finals. The iconic picture right there from Getty Images. It's one of the pictures that I still have on my phone that I saved shortly after he died. And he shot 6 of 24 from the field. Only scored 20. I mean, you can look at it, only scored 24 points, or 23 points, pardon me. He was 0 of 6 from 3, but he was 11 of 15 from the line, grabbed 15 rebounds, 4 offensive rebounds. He did what he had to do. I mean, he turned the ball over 4 times, and this isn't to crack on him, but he got that Celtics monkey off his back, and he needed that to get 5, one more than Shaq. Go back-to-back with a Pau Gasol, which is no scrub. I mean, go back-to-back without a top 75 teammate. And defeat. I mean, after 2008, he needed some payback, and I know he wanted it too. I know he probably wanted it more than anything. And just the emotion of that championship, and just see him, hand stretched, how much 5 meant to him, the emotion coming out. Like, it was almost like the MJ 6. You could see the emotion that came out of him when he got that one done. I mean, everyone really, but that was a monkey Kobe had to get off his back, and he did. And like I said, it may not have been pretty. It may not have been perfect. He didn't score 40 that game. He didn't shoot efficiently, and he wasn't Kobe-esque. But when the moment came, big pass to Ron Artest, who hit the clutch 3 at the minute to go. He hit a clutch contested pull-up. Free throws down the stretch. And like I said, a lot of big key rebounds, along with Pau Gasol. He and Pau Gasol combined for almost 40 rebounds, I believe, that game, if not more. 18, and yeah, if not more. So Game 7 in 2010 obviously sticks out to me. Number 2, this one is the one that a lot of people here might not remember because you're just too young, but this really put Kobe on the map. Game 4 takeover against the Pacers in the 2000 NBA Finals. Longtime basketball historians remember this game. Obviously, it's number 8 Kobe, my favorite Kobe, Afro Kobe. One of the reasons I got into basketball. A lot of you that don't remember this. So what had happened is that obviously we remember how dominant Shaq was during those three-peat years. Kobe goes from missing most of Game 2 and all of Game 3 with a sprained ankle. Lakers are the favorites in the series. They led the Pacers 2-1 heading into this game. And Shaq fouls out in the fourth quarter. Big Diesel fouled out. And it was all on a 21-year-old kid's shoulders to carry them home and give them a chance rather to not go back to LA down 3-2. Not saying they would have, but if Indiana ties up the series, has momentum, you remember back then it was 2-3-2. It wasn't 2-2, 1-1-1. So Game 5 would have been was in Indianapolis. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But Kobe scores 28 points. Game goes into overtime. Just showed physical toughness, perseverance, craved the pressure. Just told Shaq. Shaq told the story to the day. Shaq still tells the story to this day. Kobe's like, I got you. I got it, big fella. I got it. made a pair of straightaway jumpers, and finally a reverse putback layup to seal the win with 6 seconds to go. Became the difference of a 2-2 series and a 3-1 lead. It was the only one of their championship wins during that run of 3 straight where the series was somewhat close. And I know people will, to the day, till they're blue in the face, say, listen, Kobe wasn't the driving force behind. He wasn't the straw that stirred the drink for those 3 teams, but it wasn't like he was Shaq when it came to Dwayne Wade in 2006, averaging 13 in the finals. He was averaging between 25 and 30 in any given series. And there's a reason that people look at Shaq and Kobe as the best pound-for-pound duo ever because of their individual greatness, outside of their greatness as a duo. Scottie Pippen was no Michael Jordan individually. By the time that D-Wade and LeBron linked up, they had one, D-Wade wasn't the same guy because of injuries. But these were 2 alphas at their peaks. Arguably, Kobe wasn't at his complete apex, but he was no damn slouch. And that's why that's number 4. Honestly, I debated putting that number 1 because that ultimately ended up being Kobe's legacy, was thriving under pressure and making big plays in key moments. But number 1, I think everyone knew was coming. It was 81 points masterpiece against Toronto in 2006. Everyone remembers the infamous images of Jalen Rose trying to guard him. Chris Bosh was on the Raptors. He remembered it as well. Kobe goes 28 of 46 from the field, hits 7 of 13 threes, 18 of 20 free throws, 81 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. Ironically, Lamar Odom had 7 assists that game as the Lakers beat the Raptors 122-104. Now, obviously, at the time, the Lakers were only 22-19, Raptors 14-27, but nobody ever thought that anyone would ever, especially in the modern day and age, especially a guard, because Wilt, he scored 100 points. I do not buy in the conspiracy theory that Wilt did not score 100 because there's no video of it. I think that's just a wild act. I hear plenty of people argue that. This is why I had to bring that up. But 81-point masterpiece versus Toronto in 2006, and it was mesmerizing to watch because you never thought you'd see a guy that wasn't, physically overpowering, and compared to Wilt towered over everybody back in his day and was so skilled that it didn't really matter who was on him. Kobe was that skilled as well, but when you have that size difference, it really makes a difference. But 81 points in the modern day and age, it's something that's no one's eclipsed it since. And it's going to be hard to see someone eclipsing it anytime soon, even despite, the barrage of threes that are now shot and, how little defense is actually played in the NBA nowadays. But overall, individually, there were a lot of moments I could have put in, a lot of honorable mentions, against the Suns in 2010, the little tap on the butt to Alvin Gentry after hitting the dagger against Phoenix. 2009, bouncing back, even though it was against the underdog Magic. There's a lot of great moments that come to mind, but those were the top 5 that I really, really think of when I think of who Kobe meant to me, what Kobe meant to me as a fan, and why I've got him tattooed on me, and why that mentality keeps me motivated to try to be better every single day. Is because what do you want to be, a jack of all trades, a master of none? No, I want to try to master everything I set out to do. I hope to be the master of YouTube in Lord knows how many years, but I'm going to try. Probably won't happen, but I'm damn sure going to try. And who knows, if this works out and this becomes my next career, great. If not, it keeps me creative and it keeps me going. So those are my favorite Kobe moments. Let me know what some of your favorites are in the comments. I think those are a lot. Of course, some of you in the chat, the Bears are undefeated this year. You do realize that was the preseason, right? And Burrow has been to the Super Bowl. Lamar hasn't. That long ago Super Bowl run does not make Joe Burrow a better quarterback than Lamar, and I don't think the Bengals are ever going back to the Super Bowl with this iteration of even with this iteration of Joe Burrow. So we'll see what happens. But we're going to get into the final topic of the show because Ravens kicker Tyler Loop, pardon me, Finishes out the preseason with a banger. And what do I mean by that? 3 of 3 on extra points, 3 of 3 on field goals, coming into a season in which he's replacing arguably the greatest kicker, at least the most accurate kicker in NFL history. Tyler Loop goes 3 for 3. I'm pulling up the numbers now, obviously. All right. So Tyler Loop goes 3 of 3. 40. He's good from 46 yards. He's good from, looks like, 52. And then caps his day off with a 61-yard field goal that left no doubt was going to happen. I don't know about you. Don't really take much stock into the preseason, but I do take stock into something like this. We're going to pull it up and show you.
Yeah. All right, here's Tyler Loop, 61-yard field goal. This one on its way. And got it. Now he hit it from 62.
I don't know what there's not to be encouraged about that, because that's been probably the biggest question mark for the Ravens, aside from, how good their guard play is going to be, or Jair Alexander's health, which, he's not their number one corner, but we'll see what happens with that, is how are they going to replace Justin Tucker? Now, replacing the Justin Tucker of last year wasn't going to take a lot, but for the last 12, 15 years, it's been a given that the Ravens get to the 45, the 40, they've got an automatic 3 points. Ravens fans have been spoiled in that regard, and I will be the first to admit it when it comes to having a security blanket like that. I mean, he hit multiple 60-plus yard winners, including the NFL record of 66 yards in Detroit. Both 60-plus yard game winners were in Detroit, ironically, of all places, the Palace of Misery. But last year, Justin Tucker was a liability, and it came to fruition why. He's getting older. Pressure of these stories, I think, got to him. I mean, there's no way to actually prove that, but it was just a steep drop-off, and it's hard to see. I mean, Peyton Manning had a steep drop-off in his final season, but playing quarterback and playing kicker is two totally different positions. Quarterback's the most scrutinized position in all of sports, the hardest position perhaps to play in all of sports. Kicker is somewhat, the pressure's on you, but Justin Tucker had made a living out of hitting 50-plus yard field goals for years. He could roll out of bed and hit a 50-plus yarder, it seemed like, for 10 years. But Tyler Loop showing promise. I think that gives Ravens fans hope of what's to come. It certainly gives me some hope, given that I don't take much stock into preseason games. I see so many fans across social media saying, oh, we're on a revenge tour because we had one good drive in the preseason. Come on, dude. You're not even playing against starters. The only team that you can take stock into in the preseason right now is the Bengals, because they've played their starters so many times, and the results have not been what they've wanted to see because their defense is Swiss cheese and their offensive line is Swiss cheese. Everyone knows their receivers are great. They're going to put up points, but when you can't protect the quarterback, your generational quarterback, and you can't stop anybody, and teams run, get average 6-plus yards per play on you, you're not going to win many games. But overall, I put a lot of stock into a kicker because aside from the internal struggles of the pressure you put on yourself, the situations aren't really that different when you're kicking a 61-yarder in a regular season game compared to a preseason game. Like I said, it's all about in here, how much pressure you put on yourself and how you handle that pressure. And Tyler Loop's done a good job so far from what I've read and from what I've seen. And ultimately, if he's the biggest hole that the Ravens have and he's looking really promising, I see no reason to doubt why he couldn't be an asset instead of a liability late in games. Justin Tucker was on his way out. It's hard to sit here and say because he was a staple there for so long, but it was coming one day. It was coming sooner than later. And I'm glad that it was taken care of sooner. The replacement was found sooner than later. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, this isn't the regular season, but if we've learned anything from the past when it comes to kickers, like I said, it's just an internal battle. Billy Cundiff, physically wasn't talented enough to make a 32-yarder to tie the AFC Championship game in 2011. I think he was. I think he just choked. Scott Norwood probably was. I mean, back then a 40-something yarder was longer than longer, or it was looked at as more of a challenge than it is now. But probably still could have made that field goal to win the Bills one of those 4 Super Bowls, but he choked. It's another thing that the Bills franchise is known for doing. But we won't get into that. We'll get into that later here at a different day. But overall, let me know what you guys thought of my Kobe list. Let me know what you think about Lyle Menendez being denied parole. Do you think the right decision was made? I do. I think the longer that killers are behind bars, the better off society is going to be. And let me know what you think about the Bengals defense. Did Mina Kimes and Chris Canty have a point, or are they just hating? Or am I just hating? Let me know. But subscribe. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment to boost the algorithm. Like I said, I'm going to be putting out the new schedule for the show on Monday. We're going to be getting into a lot of different topics, and we're going to have a lot of guests on for football season. But overall, stick with it, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Hope to see you in the next one. Like I said, before you go, let me know what you thought of my list. Someone in the chat says never. SRT Outlaw says never that. I don't know what never that's responding to. You have to let me know before we get out. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Comment, like, follow me on Instagram at Cory Sanning. Follow me on X at Cory Sanning. Follow the show at The Cory Sanning Show and at The Cory Sanning Show on Facebook. Show us some love. We'll be introducing more stuff this week for that you all can support the channel. But until then, stay groovy, tune into the next one, and have a good rest of the Saturday, y'all.